Welcome to Broken Law, brought to you by the American Constitution Society, a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. I'm your host today, Taonga Leslie. I'm Director of Policy and Program for Racial Justice. And we're joined today by Dawn Blagrove. She is the Executive Director of Emancipate North Carolina. Dawn Blagrove has years of experience fighting on issues like mass incarceration. She's a proud graduate of FAMU. And in her current role, she's working to educate people about and abolish the carceral state in North Carolina. Amazing work. Welcome to Broken Law, Dawn. We're so glad to have you. Today, we've got Dawn on to talk about some of the attacks we're seeing on progressive jurists across the country. A lot of you listeners may be aware of the impeachment or not impeachment proceedings going on in Wisconsin against Judge Jeanne. There's a lesser known case that's making its way through North Carolina, where the one Black justice on the North Carolina Supreme Court is now facing some potential disciplinary charges related to her comments on DEI on the court. Dawn, can you just give us a little bit of background? This, by the way, is Anita Earls, who's a fabulous jurist. But could you give me a little bit of background on what Justice Earls' situation is and sort of how this arose and what the facts are?
Yes. Thank you for having me. It is a pleasure to be here, and it's a really important topic that we need to be paying very close attention to all over the country. Justice Anita Earls has built a career around protecting the rights of the folks who are most marginalized, the rights of people who are, Black and brown, protecting civil rights, fighting for justice, fighting for equity. That has been her career. Here in North Carolina, she is most famously known for her work around election protection and fighting back voter suppression laws in the state of North Carolina. Prior to, and it's important for that context to be set to discuss why she's under attack right now. So she is now the only Black person and the only Black woman sitting on the North Carolina Supreme Court. In North Carolina, our judges are elected. They are not lifetime positions. She is elected in a statewide position. So she's an elected official who was elected by all of the people of North Carolina. Recently, there has been a change in the makeup of the North Carolina Supreme Court. It has become extremely conservative, and Justice Earls is a far, far outlier from the rest of the court. To that end, the powers that be in North Carolina are colluding to simply erase and silence the voices of Black people and to suppress Black power, political power, in any ways that they can. We are seeing that at the state level from our General Assembly. We are seeing that also on our courts. So Justice Earls is being attacked because she is a hindrance. She is a hindrance to the rolling back of North Carolina to Jim Crow, where white men made all the decisions and made all of the political ideology and determined who was of value and who wasn't. Justice Earls, even when she is in the very small minority, even when she is standing alone, is always the voice of fairness and justice and equity on the court. And our current Chief Justice and several other folks in the state have just decided that they do not want that voice at the table, that it is not fair or reasonable for us to be there. And when I say us, I mean Black, brown, marginalized people, because that is who Justice Earls embodies in her work. So Justice Earls made a statement in an interview that was based on statistical data and research about the racial composition of the judiciary and the bar in North Carolina. She stated very correctly that there is a lack of diversity in the people that argue before the Supreme Court of North Carolina, the people that sit on the Supreme Court of North Carolina. And that in and of itself creates an imbalance, an unfairness, a lack of perspective, a lack of diversity. It creates a monolithic idea of what the world should look like. And there's no room for alternative thoughts, ideas, or ideologies.
And I want you to continue, but I want to jump in there for the listeners, because these stats what you're talking about, I was shocked. Like the report, I think, if I'm getting this right, said 90% of the oral advocates were white, 70% were men, and that of the 15 clerks they had, there was not a single Black clerk. Like it was one of those that I was like, oh, this is not even close. This is like a sort of a wipeout of any type of diversity.
That's right. And to give you an idea, and just to further expound on that, when challenged about the lack of diversity in the clerks, our current Chief Justice Paul Newby, responded by saying that they hired the most qualified individuals, irregardless of race. And the implication is that there are no qualified Black candidates or people of color at all. There are no qualified non-male white candidates to fill those positions. And I think that speaks volumes about what is happening in our court. And the judicial activism, I hate to say that because it's a term that has been co-opted, but the judicial activism that we are seeing on the North Carolina courts, and why it is so important for them to expel Justice Earls and anyone who thinks like her from having any place in power, having any voice. Just to give you an example, today, our North Carolina Court of Appeals issued opinions, and one of the cases was about the termination of parental rights. And somehow the majority judge who wrote the opinion was able to find a way to include in the opinion that life starts at conception. Right. Now, it is very innocuously included. It's stated almost like a fact in this published opinion. And you and I, as jurists, we know what that means. We know what that's a harbinger for. And that is the kind of thing that we are fighting against in North Carolina. This kind of environment where extreme conservatism becomes the status quo and the norm. And as part of that, that's why they want to get rid of Justice Earls. And so what has happened is that Justice Earls was an anonymous grievance was filed with the Judicial Standards Commission here in North Carolina. Grievances can be anonymous. The grievance claimed that she had tarnished the image of the court by implying that her colleagues had racial animus. Now, this is Justice Earls' second time being investigated this year by a commission that gets, less than 400 complaints a year. Of those 400 grievances that are filed, there is somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 40 that are ever even really investigated. Last year, they didn't send any to the Supreme Court for final adjudication. So the fact that Justice Earls has been investigated twice in 1 year, it's more than just an outlier. It is unheard of, right? And there is no way not to see that she is being targeted specifically, not just by the individuals filing the grievances, but also by the commission itself, because it has the full discretion to determine that a grievance has no basis, has no merit, and that they do not need to investigate it. Not only have they investigated once for Justice Earls, they have investigated twice within a 12-month period. It is clear that there is a political agenda.
And I do want to ask on that. It's so, so this is about basically the commentary that she'd made. And I just want to be clear on, is this something that has ever happened before for another judge, another justice being admonished in this way for comments about the court? Like, is this a thing, or is this just like something that they've just brought up for her?
No, absolutely not. And not only is it not a thing, the glaring double standard is so present with this particular court. Justice Newby has often referred to Anita Earls as the AOC of North Carolina, said that he loses sleep thinking about when he was running for Chief Justice, he loses sleep thinking about a court, North Carolina court, being full of AOCs, referring to Justice Earls.
Mm-hmm.
in published opinions, other judges have admonished her specifically, said that she was being hyperbolic in her analysis of the law, have said that she was being overly emotional and oversensitive, was bringing
I
in
hear the dog whistles. I hear them. I'm just like,
you hear
oh,
the dog whistles,
hear the
right? All of those
yeah.
things, right?
Yeah.
In published opinions, right? Not just in private conversations, but in published opinions have said things like that about Justice Earls. Justice Earls herself talks about in the article that she is being investigated for, talks about some of the ways that she is disrespected on the court, how she is interrupted even as she is asking questions by colleagues, by other judges, and those things just don't happen. There's a professional courtesy that is not extended to her. And that is because we believe primarily because she is a Black woman who advocates for the rights of Black, brown, and marginalized people.
Yeah. And this is so, well, I also want to make sure I have but I'm already seeing like, you're in a situation where she is in many ways having these microaggressions. We're seeing this plan out, and her, by raising the flag, actually the report was published. She was just commenting on the report, but that becomes the problem and not the
problem itself.
atmosphere.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to give you more context around that, because I could just go on and on, our previous Chief Justice was Sherry Beasley, who was a Black woman, ran for Senate in North Carolina, lost by marginal numbers, or sad case of affairs. She ran against our current Chief Justice, Justice Newby, for the Chief Justice position again. She lost by a mere 400 votes. So it's not like there was some huge mandate for Paul Newby to be the Chief Justice. Immediately upon winning the election and being sworn in, Justice Newby revoked a standing order that Chief Justice Beasley had issued about racial biases within the criminal justice system. And she had issued a statement or an order that basically said, we acknowledge that there is systemic and institutional racism, that it has a disparate effect on the way that the justice system works for Black, brown, marginalized people. And it is our responsibility and our duty to make sure that we are self-correcting within the judiciary for those known biases. The first thing he did was strike that order and remove that. So that is no longer a part of the, framework of how our Supreme Court works. He also dismantled the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. He stopped the court from having any racial equity training and has gone on the record as saying that he has never in his entire career as a lawyer or a judge seen a case where a defendant or a litigant was not treated fairly because of their race.
This is wild. I mean, this is
it's crazy, right? It really
is. And people have 34-year careers, not one time. Oh my gosh. But
that it doesn't exist. It's not a thing. It's made up. Literally, that systemic and institutional racism does not exist. That it is made up. That it is all in our heads, and that America is great and fair and just.
And we just do this for fun. We just
do it for fun. Yeah, just for fun. And also, I mean, if you play out that line of thinking, the only way you can hold that opinion in the face of the disparate numbers of Black people who are incarcerated and who are detrimentally impacted by the criminal justice system is that there is something innately wrong with Black people, that we are somehow more criminal. If everything works fairly, if the system is not biased in and of itself, then the reason that we are overrepresented in the criminal justice system can only be because we are innately criminal in some way, innately bad in some way, innately flawed, innately subhuman. Those are the troubling undertones of what is happening, not just in North Carolina, but all over the country.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's sobering. Like there's a part of it that feels absurd, and at the same time, this is an actual thing that's actually progressing forward, has not been dismissed. Like this is a real live complaint, and I want to understand what are the stakes right now. Like, so say this keeps going forward. Like, is it admonishment? Is it removal? Like, what is on the possibilities for Judge Earls?
You think it just keeps getting crazier. I swear, if I wasn't living this, I wouldn't believe that this was how it works. The Judicial Standards Commission just recently, as part of the North Carolina budget that was passed, its makeup is being changed. So right now, North Carolina General Assembly has a supermajority, which means that the Republican Party has enough votes to override any veto from the governor. But it also means that they have enough votes to do whatever they want. So one of the many egregious things that they have done in the budget process was change the makeup of the Judicial Standards Commission. Right now, there are 4 lawyers that are appointed by the North Carolina Bar that serve on that commission. Well, not right now. As of the passing of the budget, those 4 lawyers are removed, and they are being replaced by 4 appointees by the supermajority Republican General Assembly. So at this point, the commission is made up of 6 appointees from the General Assembly, 6 appointees from Chief Justice Paul Newby, who says that there is no racial animus or no systemic or institutional racism, and then 2 from our democratically elected or our Democratic governor for now. That commission does an investigation into the allegation. If they find that, and then there is a hearing, if they believe that there is a substantial evidence to support the allegation or the claim, there is a hearing that they conduct. At the end of that hearing, they make a determination and a suggestion as to what should happen to this particular judge. Then that recommendation goes to the Supreme Court of North Carolina. And the Supreme Court of North Carolina is able to determine what, if any, punishment should be levied against the aggrieved judge. That could be up to removal from political office, or no, it could be removal from political office. It could be as much as a full disbarment and the failure to be able to practice, or the removing her license to practice law. So what is at stake is everything for Justice Earls. At this point, the case is she is a fighter. She fights for other folks. She's fighting for herself. She has filed a federal lawsuit claiming that this investigation is an infringement on her First Amendment rights as a human being, but also as a judge. And we are waiting to see. She is asking for the investigation to be stopped. That is still pending in federal court. The defendants filed a response on October 6th. And that response stated essentially they're asking for a summary dismissal based on the fact that this is a states' rights issue. This is an issue about state administrative decisions, and that it should be a state's matter. It should not be, even though there is a clear First Amendment violation, that this is something that should be governed by the states. And that's what they're asking. They're asking to send it back to the state and let us take care of our own business. The problem with that is that we know if it goes back to the state, if she gets kicked out of federal court, we know where this is going. She is going to be removed from office by people who have expressed extreme and very public biases against her and everything that she represents. There is no illusion of objectivity on the judiciary in North Carolina, or the legislative branch as well. They are working together here in North Carolina as a matter of fact. Just for fun facts, the leader of our Senate, his name is Phil Berger, in North Carolina, who has been the leader of our Senate for quite some time, is the father of Baby Berger, Phil Berger Jr., who is also a Supreme Court justice.
That is, and even that process that you described of, the same judges who nominated the people on the commission are the ones who hear the case that comes out of it. I mean, it does feel very incestuous. I'm also thinking of I believe, didn't the justices also undo the redistricting to allow for the supermajority? So it's
Yeah, they just released maps yesterday, and boy, are they crazy. What they have done though is ensure that they will be able to hold on to their supermajority. There are two large urban strongholds here in North Carolina. One is in Wake County, one is in Mecklenburg County. When you look at the proposed maps, what you see is large swaths of rural counties put together in one district, and then you see Wake County being broken up into 15 or 20 different districts to fully dilute the voting power of urban strongholds. It's egregious. But not only is it egregious, it has also reached a fever pitch in that they do not even feel like they have to use dog whistles. Like they're not even pretending anymore that they are trying to create a system that is fair, that is designed to create political power and distribute political power among all the people of North Carolina. That is not what is happening here. And when you have the collusion that we have between your legislative branch and your judicial branch, you really don't have a democracy. And that's where we're headed. And that's what's at stake here. Because we know that if we are not able to stop this blatantly racist public lynching of Justice Earls, that there is no Black or brown person. There is no person who is fighting for the right of equity. There is no person who is fighting for the right of full inclusion that is not going to be subject to McCarthyism type witch hunts by the Judicial Standards Commission.
You're listening to Broken Law, brought to you by the American Constitution Society. If you're enjoying Broken Law, consider becoming a member of ACS today. You do not need to be a lawyer to be a member. As we discuss so often on this podcast, our laws and legal systems impact all of us. By supporting ACS, you support Broken Law, our work to diversify the federal bench, and our advocacy for Supreme Court reform. You also become a member of our nationwide network. Learn more about ACS by visiting our website at acslaw.org. And now, back to the conversation.
Okay, so Dawn, you've really laid out a lot of the storm clouds on the horizon in North Carolina. It sounds like a very dire situation, to be honest. And I would love to hear from you. What is your organization? What are organizations on the ground doing to fight back in this situation?
So Emancipate NC is an organization, as we've already stated, that's committed to ending systemic and institutional racism. And one of the ways that we are able to do that with the level of success that we are is because we do it in very non-traditional ways. We like to say that we use guerrilla warfare tactics in the sense that we do not hinder ourselves or limit ourselves by the traditional ways of interacting with the powers that be. And we are freeing ourselves of that obligation, because if the people that have power are using that power to subjugate the people, then the people have a right to fight back in whatever ways that they can. And so what we are doing is, first of all, we are helping people understand the real numbers of the electoral process. We're helping people understand that while there are lots and lots of people who have the right to vote, relatively few of them actually exercise that right. And because of that, if we are able to bring even a small population of the people who never engage in the political process, and we're able to pull them in, we can create a seismic shift in the outcome of the electoral process. But that only happens when people believe that they have something to gain from participating in the political process. And we also are doing a lot of work connecting the dots for folks, not just asking people to vote because it is a moral or ethical responsibility, but helping people understand how their day-to-day lives are tangibly improved when they participate in the electoral process. A couple of examples of that are, we talked about earlier, former Chief Justice Sherry Beasley, who believed wholeheartedly and understood as a Black woman the systemic and institutional racism that lived inside of the criminal justice system, and also understood that it was the responsibility of the judiciary to try to correct for those implicit biases. Instead, we elected Chief Justice Newby, who believes that in his entire career as a jurist, he has never seen race play out in the courtroom or impact the decisions in any courtroom or judicial process. The difference between those two people and those two ideologies controlling the courts of North Carolina was 400 votes. And so we're helping people understand that. And, very often I talk to students about the numerical differences and the razor thin delineation between radically different ideologies and power centers. And they will literally gasp. They are so surprised. So it's important to make sure that we are connecting the dots for people between why their vote matters and how it changes their lives tangibly. Another perfect example that we use is in North Carolina, district attorneys are elected. So many Black and brown folks, their gateway into the criminal justice system is low-level marijuana charges. If you elect the right district attorney, you can have someone who says they are not prosecuting any low-level marijuana charges. The changes that has on your life, on the lives of people on the ground. If you live in subsidized housing, for example, and you have someone in your home that has a criminal record, that person either cannot live in your home or you lose your subsidized housing. The district attorney that you elect can help you figure out, keep your family intact if you're living in subsidized housing so that no one in your house has a criminal record. That is the way that we have to talk to people about the power of voting, about the importance of voting. And we have to make people see that it is a beneficial transaction to engage in the electoral process. So that is the kind of work that Emancipate is doing. We are also raising the alarm, helping people understand that just because there is a process in place, we very often use the term systemic and institutional racism as though it is self-explanatory, which is just not. And so one of the things that we do very, very well is work to help people understand what systemic and institutional racism looks like in practice. For example, when you have the Supreme Court appointing commissioners to the Judicial Standards Commission that is clearly biased against Justice Earls and Black people, and then you have General Assembly that gets to appoint the other majority of the people on that commission who are supposed to be fair arbiters of whether or not a person meets the ethical standards of being a judge. And all of those people work together to collude to get rid of certain elements within the criminal justice system, particularly those elements that are working to create fairness and equity and to undo the racial harm of biases. Yeah, that's bad. And that is not, and that is a problem. And when we explain it to people like that, they get it, right? And when people get it, once people know something, once people see the harm in a system, once people see the bigger plan, it's hard to make them unsee it. So that is the work that we do, helping people see it and then giving them ways to become fully engaged, not just during the electoral process, but also helping them hold elected officials and people who we give power to accountable, not just to the people that elected them, but to all of the people in a way that makes sure that they are creating communities and creating living situations that reflect the values of all of the people and not just a very small fringe conservative right-wing group of people who are sort of hijacking the social fabric of America right now.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you because there's definitely not enough, but I have seen like some of the other national orgs keeping this issue in the news, people like Brennan and Alliance for Justice. And do you see an impact from just having this be something that we are trying to keep on the national agenda?
Absolutely, I do. And I think a perfect example in the most recent past is the incorporation of police abolition and abolishing the carceral system into regular mainstream American lexicon, right? And we did that in a matter of less than 5 years, right? We were able to radically shift what is possible in America by introducing concepts that have been around for 30, 40 years, right? Angela Davis has been talking about abolition her whole life. But just now has it become part of the American lexicon. And having it part of the American lexicon is a step towards creating that new world order that we want to see, creating that new transformative justice that we all deserve. So I think in this moment, there is nothing more important than helping people, than talking about these issues, than calling them out. There's nothing more important than helping people understand the real implications of these racist policies, of us calling them racist, of us saying that they are trying to take us back to Jim Crow. They are trying to make you count jelly beans at the ballot box so that you can get access to vote. These are real things. This isn't hyperbole. And the more we talk about it, the more real it becomes, the more validating that individual lived experiences become, and people are able to create a connective fabric of realities, right? Because one of the tools of white supremacy is gaslighting. White supremacy is a master gaslighter. But when we are talking about this consistently, and we are talking about, no, this is not in your head. No, you are not being overly sensitive. No, you are not playing the race card. There is a national systemic plan to disenfranchise and take away power from Black people. And that reality can only be solidified and validated when we talk about it. So talking about it, making sure that we are all talking about it, making sure that we are connecting the dots between what is happening in North Carolina, what is happening in Wisconsin, what is happening in Florida, and helping people see that there is a larger plan in play, and that if we don't attack it from a place of unity and collectivity, that we will lose, because they are attacking us from a place of unity and collectivity. So talking about it, connecting the dots, connecting these stories, and creating a strong fabric of harms that are created by these types of rolling back of social and civil rights all over America is incredibly necessary for us to be able to fight back against it.
I also want to ask you, you've been in this for a while, and it's not all sunshine and roses. And so I want to ask, how do you stay hopeful in this fight and not burnt out, not discouraged, not jaded? What are you drawn?
So that's a question that I get a lot. And the reality of the matter is, as easy as it is to look at the situation that we are in right now in America and view it from a place of cynicism, it is just as easy to reframe it and view it from a place of incredible hope. And here's what I mean. I mean that many of the systems that have upheld white supremacy, that have upheld systemic and institutional racism, many of those institutions are being cannibalized by themselves, right? We have a Supreme Court of the United States that no longer recognize stare decisis, right? We have right now, for the first time in American history, no Speaker of the House. We cannot, literally, the American government is completely shut down because of anarchy, right? Within the Republican Party. The veil is very thin. And we have never had an opportunity in America, not probably since the formation of our government, since 1776, have we had the opportunity to radically reshape every fundamental institution in this country. And if we recognize that reality, anything can happen. And when anything can happen, that anything could be something terrible. It could be the demise of democracy, or it could be what our forefathers imagined when they said that periodically the government has to be reimagined. It has to be changed in order to reflect the values of the American people. We are at a moment where real reflective work can be done, and we really have the power to create the government that we believe should exist in America. And that is what keeps me going. The possibility that out of chaos, something transformative can happen. And I believe that it can.
Oh, I want to believe too. Well, that is a perfect place to stop. Thank you so much, Dawn. Thank you for taking your time to come on this show. We really appreciate it. And to our listeners, I hope if you enjoyed this, you'll consider other episodes from Broken Law. We really are looking at progressive issues that face all of us. We've had episodes the last couple of weeks on space law. We had a few weeks ago our preview of this coming Supreme Court term, which has huge implications for all of us. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And you can find those episodes wherever you found this one. You can also look to us on our website at acslaw.org and click on Broken Law. So thanks so much.